Received an email today from the church secretary, which is what has now become an annual special Bible study that we do here at Watson, which is the Ask Us event. And the Ask Us event is an opportunity for the church to ask any question that they desire to have answered, biblical. Any question that they may have been wrestled with. It doesn't have to be on devout Christianity. It could be any question that you have that you want to ask, and the ministers will take the whole hour and a half to answer those questions. And so that's going to be on November the 16th. I'm asking that you get those questions in as early as you possibly can, just so that I can get the questions to the ministers and allow them some time to think through them. But it's one of the most viewed, I think it is the most viewed Bible study that we have throughout the year. And that's just because not only the church watches it, but other churches watch that particular Bible study because it's such a unique sort of Bible study. So any question that you have, some question that you have already asked will be answered. So some people have sent me questions throughout the week, or they send me questions, ever so often, whether that be through text message or whether that be through email. Those questions will be raised, and the ministers will answer those questions for you. It's a really we have a good time, and so if you haven't had the opportunity to come to one of those, we're going to have you come to one of those. I'm also going to try to have, I'm just going to say this in advance, try to have microphones stationed in the aisle, so in case people want to ask a question, the people that are listening can actually hear the questions that you have if we have time to get to those. But remember that the write-in questions will get priority, and then if we have any time left after answering the write-in questions, then we'll get to some open mic questions and whoever's asking questions on the live stream. So remember, the Ask Us event, that is the last Bible study for the year, the Ask Us event, and so we'll take a winter break and return on January the 4th, continuing to forge forward in our study on devout Christianity. So go ahead and start submitting those questions. If you don't want to email them, write them on a piece of paper. I'll have something prayerfully available for you on this coming Lord's Day to where you can fill out those questions and perhaps leave them at the Welcome Center. And we'll go ahead and start to work through those as a ministerial team. So any question that you have, don't have to write your name. You can be anonymous. This is your opportunity to have that asked and answered. All right? Okay. So we are going to go ahead. We're almost finished with this study on the violence of holiness. And I want to just read out of John Owen's Mortification of Sin on tonight. This comes out of chapter 6. I just want to read just some quotes out of John Owen's Mortification of Sin. And I want you to just hear some of the things that he had to say about mortifying. Now, when I say mortifying sin, what do I mean when I say mortify? I mean kill it. I mean put it to death. And so John Owen writes a book on the mortification of sin. That is the title of the book. It's not the entire title. When the Puritans wrote, they had these extremely long titles, but for brevity's sake, it's just the mortification of sin on this particular abridged version. But chapter 6 in John Owen's work, The Mortification of Sin, it's called What Mortification Is. And I want you to hear what he has to say under a couple of headings. And so on the first page of this chapter 6, the heading, the mortification of lust consists, John Owen says, of three things. The first thing that John Owen says that mortification of lust consists of is a habitual weakening of the lust. Here's some of the quotes that he has under this. Even though a lust is not always exerting an influence in our imagination and thoughts, we should consider that lust that we seek to mortify a strong and deeply rooted habitual inclination and bent of the will and affections. What is he saying? John Owen says, even though you don't feel it in some seasons, some of you may be feeling pretty good right now. It's like not really feeling like I'm really wrestling with it. The sin that really, that I struggle with the most, I'm not really feeling it right now. So I feel pretty good. John Owen says, don't think that way. If you're thinking that way, you're about to fall. You have to conduct yourself like that thing is alive and well. Because the reality is, even though it's dormant, it's alive and well. The habitual weakening of, he says the strength is, I'm just going to, just some things that I highlighted. And I read this years ago. He says the strength of the lust darkens the mind. This is how it works, right? This is the nature of our lust. He said the strength of the lust darkens the mind so that the knowledge that once might have resisted exerts no power over the will, so that the lust finds freedom to express itself. He says Satan has thousands of ways to support a lust so that it grows violent and impetuous above other lust. So think about this, the chapter, right? The violence of holiness. John Owen is saying that your lust is violent. And Satan has 1,000 ways to prop up and to promote lust, and the lust that is already in our own hearts. He says, in particular, listen to how this works. In particular, lust gets its strength by temptation. When a suitable temptation falls in line with a lust, the lust obtains a new life, vigor, power, listen to this word, violence, and rage that it did not seem capable of before. Yeah, he explains lust. I mean, lust gets its strength from temptation, and then all of a sudden it's just this rage within us. Remember what I was saying to you some weeks ago. Lust just says, do it, and hurry up and do it. Don't think about it, do it. Don't ponder this thing. You're going to feel good if you do it. Do it. It's a very violent kind of disposition, heart attitude. You might say, I need to pray. Don't pray, do it. I need to read my Bible. Don't read, do it. He says of the weakening of lust, he said the first thing in mortification is the weakening of the habit of sin or lust, so that it shall not, with that violence, earnestness, and frequency, rise up and conceive, provoke, entice, and disquiet, as it naturally has a tendency to do. This is called, listen to this, Galatians 5:24, this is called crucifying the flesh with its passions and desires. We seek to take away that about it which gives it its strength and power. We aim at the killing of the body of death day by day. Yeah, 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 16 beside that. I love this illustration here on the next page. Crucifying the flesh. Listen to how he describes crucifying the flesh. He says, when a man is nailed to a cross, this is Galatians, I have been crucified with Christ, is what Paul says. So notice, watch this. He says, when a man is nailed to a cross, he at first struggles, strives, and cries out with great strength and might. But as his blood and spirits waste, his strivings are faint and seldom, his cries low and hoarse, and scarce to be heard. So when a man first determines to conquer a lust or sin and to deal with it in earnest, here it is, it struggles with great violence to break loose. It cries with earnestness and impatience to be satisfied and relieved. Are you listening to what he's saying? This is groundbreaking if you can receive it. He said, listen, the Bible said that we need to crucify the flesh. Then he says, let me tell you what crucifixion is. When you go to crucify, man, the man or the woman, they struggle against this when they're first crucified. I mean, they struggle against it with all of their might. But as their strength and as their blood and their bodily fluids, as they waste away or waste out of the individual, then the struggle weakens. The struggle weakens. The cries weaken. The flesh weakens. He says, by mortification, the blood and spirits of it are let out. It moves seldom and faintly, cries sparingly, and is scarce heard in the heart. It may sometimes have a dying pain that makes an appearance of great vigor and strength, but it is quickly over, especially, listen to this, especially if it is kept from considerable success. If you push through the temptation without giving into the temptation, you are successful in that fight. And the more successful you are in the fight, the weaker the sin becomes. The weaker the desire to want to do that sin becomes. Are you listening? I'm going to keep marching through this. Chapter is really short, and these are just highlights. The second thing John Owen says is the constant fight and contention against sin. And he says this, we need to recognize the enemy we are dealing with and resolve. This is good. I hope you hear this part. He says we need to recognize the enemy we are dealing with and resolve that it is to be destroyed by all means possible. We need to be intimately acquainted with the ways. Listen to this. We need to be intimately acquainted with the ways, wiles, methods, and advantages and occasions which gives lust its success. This is how men deal with their enemies. They search out their plans, ponder their goals, and consider how and by what means they have prevailed over them in the past. Then they can be defeated. Without